Welcome to I Like Where This Is Going. I'm Dominique, your host. As a mom of five, I'm thrilled to share my parenting journey with you. As a parent, I've discovered life is full of surprises, and it's our response that shapes our experiences. So, in this podcast, we'll dive into the highs and lows of parenting, and I'll share my personal stories, lessons learned, and insights that I've gained along the way. Join me as we explore the ups and downs of parenting. Let's navigate this journey together. Spoiler alert, I already like where this is going. As a mom of five kids, ages 19, 14, 9, 6, and 5, our household is always lively. And I mean that in the best possible way. With such a wide age range, people often ask, which stage do I prefer? Honestly, I enjoy the preschool and teenage years. Some people might think that's a little crazy, but given the challenges these stages bring, but I see them as opportunities for growth. At both stages, my kids are exploring their capabilities and finding their inner voice. It's incredible to witness their development and watch them navigate life's ups and downs. One of the biggest challenges I face as a mom of five is understanding that each kid is wired differently. I've learned to adapt my parenting style to meet their unique needs and love languages, whether that's cuddles, support, or even sending money via Cash App. Prioritizing mental health is definitely crucial for a family. Each one of my kids are in different forms of therapy. Their diverse interests and personalities keep me on my toes. From my little artist to my budding musical star who's walking around singing nonstop. However, it wasn't always easy for me. I used to try to parent them all in the same way. But the turning point came when I realized I needed to shift my approach. I began focusing on nurturing their unique qualities, and it's made a world of difference. One of the toughest decisions that I've had to make as a parent was asking my oldest child to leave home. It was heartbreaking, and I wrestled with it for a very long time before actually asking them to leave home. And as a parent, I wanted to give them space to grow and to learn and to figure out life because none of us had it figured out. I appreciated that fact, and I understood that, and I even sympathized that their choices were affecting just not themselves, but also the rest of the family, their siblings, more importantly. So I had to weigh my desire to be a supportive parent against the need to protect my other children. And as a parent, that is a difficult position to be in. This experience made me question traditional notions of parenting success. Is success measured solely by your children's achievements, or is it about helping them become the best version of themselves? These are questions I'm still exploring, and I'm still trying to find those answers. There is no cookie cutter form of parenting. I mean, you literally have to go out there and you have to wing it. I know everyone always says there is no manual, there's no script to say like, okay, when you reach this point in life, this is what you do. There is no instructions. So you have to figure those things out. And us as a society, we often let others say, you chose to do this, or well, you're a bad parent. And, I really don't think that there's truly any bad parenting. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some bad people who just happen to be parents. So I don't think that the one can really alter the other. There are some really good people out here parenting children who don't care. They don't care for authority. They don't care to follow any rules. And it's not to say that my child was always like that. It was to say I planted those seeds in their life, and I made it so that what the Bible says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they grow old, they should not depart from it. Sometimes it's not always that simple. Hey, be a good person, make good choices. When you leave out of here, you represent not yourself, you represent me as a parent. And I can honestly say my kid is a good kid. They are a good kid. But once they start going out and experiencing life on their own, putting their hand in the cookie jar, started out with a little, and then that little turned into a lot. These kids today, they have these expectations of what they think life should be. No 19-year-old should think they should have the flashy cars, all the money, all the big houses and things like that and have life figured out at 19, man, I couldn't even tell you what I was doing at 19. I just don't know. I didn't know what I was doing at 19 years old. So not like I'm saying my kid has to have everything figured out at 19, but you have to have some type of plan, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I know that is so cliche. No, that is very true. No successful person can ever say, "Oh, I just got up one day and just decided to do this." No, they sacrificed, they worked, blood, sweat, and tears. They made things happen for them to be where they are. They sacrificed some stuff. And this kid just is not willing to sacrifice. They're not willing to sacrifice. It put me in a predicament to where I felt like I was enabling a lot of that behavior. I was accepting a lot of that behavior. Well, sometimes in a Black community, especially, we try to overcompensate with our parenting. "Oh, I didn't have this, so I'm going to make sure that my kid has this." Sometimes it does go in a negative way, because you try to make sure that your child does not go without anything, but then you create this dynamic, and this mindset of them is, "I need to have this lifestyle because I deserve to have this lifestyle." It's not to say that no one deserves to live a good lifestyle, but these are privileges that you have. These are not expectations that you should be born and have these wonderful, luxurious things. No, these are things that somebody, whether it wasn't the child, but somebody had to sacrifice to be able to get a lifestyle in this way. When I pulled back that lifestyle, it was just like, okay, well, he's like, I'm going to go and get it on my own. But then now you don't have the financial means to do it. You don't have the resources. So then what's the next best thing? I'm going to do a life of crime. And that was the way that they went. And now we're just doing all of these illegal things, and everything has to come some consequences. Some people, they may get away with it. Some people don't. I can't help but to think, where he is my fault. At what point do I make them be accountable for the things that they've done? Because again, I planted those seeds. I planted those seeds of, this is how you should live. I'm not out doing those things. I don't know anyone in my direct circle who is also out doing those things that my 19-year-old is doing. What example did they have? It wasn't an example for me, but they're getting it from their peers. Things they see on social media, things they see in movies, on the TV. Even the rappers, like the music, they have this idea of, I want this life. I feel so bad for this generation of kids, because they're growing up thinking this is normal. This is not normal. This is not something that's normal. You don't one day wake up and say, hey, I'm going to murder these people. That's not normal. That's not normal. After you do it, you go and make a rap song about it. Like, are you okay? What is the mentality of these kids that is like this? And it's sad to say that my child got caught up into that. And not to say that, they went out murdering anyone. It wasn't that bad. But I mean, it's bad. It's bad. As a parent, and as society will tell you, you have to check the home life. The home life must have been horrible. And as a younger mom, I did struggle a lot in the beginning, but I began to know and grow. What I know now, yeah, I'm doing better as a mom. I can say that I am a successful mom now, but it's like, do I let this one person calculate how I am now as a parent? Because it's the one. Honestly, up until the age of 18, this kid was honor student, National Honor Society, graduated a year early from high school, had jobs lined up, colleges lined up, and then decided, okay, I'm going to take a gap year. You can take a gap year. You've earned it. You've worked hard to earn it. Then looking back, should I have allowed them to take a gap year? You go back and you play it all in your head, and you're like, at what point during this path of this child's life did it kind of just snap? And it's just like, at some point, a transition happened. And I can't even say I even know where. Like, I can't just say like, oh, I know at this particular situation, I know this definitely altered this person. No, I honestly can't. We were having conversations every day. We were talking every day. I knew where they were every day. And I know a lot of people can't say that. They had open communication with me. So I thought everything was good. But it was once they got a taste of that freedom, mind you, this was way before I even had to ask them to leave the home. At some point, it was like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm an adult. I realize I'm an adult and I'm going to do this. And at some point, they stopped listening to my advice. They stopped coming to me for advice and they started doing. Then the thought process behind it, and I only know this is because they confided in me with this, is they were trying to gain some independence. You can't crash and burn and then once it's done you say, hey, I need help. No, the needing help should have been when you were in the thick of it. So once you're now in major trouble, and when I say major, I mean trouble with the police. Now it's like, hey, I need help. Whoa, what is going on? I had no clue. This has just been a year straight of downward spiral. And it's sad to say, I'm afraid that I'm going to get a knock on the door and it's going to be the police officer and it's going to be a very uncomfortable conversation, whether they're in jail or worse. And it's sad to say that I have had that knock on the door a few times from this same kid. It's almost become the norm now. Hey, they're in jail. It's like, oh, okay, well, we know the process now. How did this become my life? Like, how does this become my life? I feel for the younger kids because it also puts a toll on them. I can't be selfish to think like, oh, it's only affecting me because I'm directly in it, but it's also affecting the other kids. They look up to them. They look up to their older sibling. They don't know what to expect either because, again, this is something that is a complete different world to them. It's a foreign, it's taboo. They have no idea what to expect and they're scared. They're afraid. They have every right to be because you don't know if your sibling is okay. And, and even when I had to put them out, they no longer live here anymore. Where are they? Are they okay? How do you explain that to a little kid that their sibling would rather enjoy a life of crime, enjoy a life of hanging out with their friends where they used to hang out every day, do everything together? It's a big family, but we were a very close, big family. And I'm talking about like doing activities with each other all the time. We were together. We were all Velcro to each other. Wherever I'm at, they're in that same, if I'm in my bed, they're somewhere in. You got some people sprinkled on at the foot of the bed, some people on the sides, people on the floor. They followed me around like shadows, all 5 of them. And to have just that one, it's like missing a limb. Your body can't function. You learn to adjust, but it takes a long time. And then you go through that phantom limb syndrome. When they're behind bars, you can't call them and they can't call you. You don't know if they're okay. They used to say, 10 p.m., do you know where your child is? Kinda, but not really. Before, I used to be able to say that. Like I knew where my kids were at all times. And if they weren't home, I knew where they were. I knew that they were safe. But for the past year with this kid, I have not been able to say that. It's been unearthing. It's really been unearthing to know that this kid can't have a strong will to live if you're living the way they've been living. Is this depression? Is this some type of mental health crisis? I've tried to get them help, but again, because they're an adult, you can't force them. Those services can only go but so far. You try to intervene, but then, hey, they're an adult. They have free will to be able to do this. Unless there is a attempt of suicide or something like that, there's not much that you can do, even as their parent, because they are an adult. Also, because now they no longer live here. It's that battle of you feel helpless. And that is a feeling that is very foreign to me because I am the make it happen type. If I can't get the resource or if I can't find the answer, I'm going to find someone who will. And I'm stubborn in that way. When it comes to my kids, I'm that way. I will not give up. And, even now that they're even in jail, I just haven't given up. I can't because it's just like, these kids, they need somebody in their corner. They need somebody in their corner. They need to know they have that unconditional love because you can't say that you have unconditional love, but it comes with conditions. I'll only love you if you follow what I say. I'll only love you if you do what I say. I only love you if you are obeying me, if you are doing what I want you to do, if you're doing X, Y, Z. No, I'm going to love you regardless, but man, am I going to be disappointed? So it's like, and I have every right to be. Has this kid really learned this lesson? I don't think that they have. Man, like, you gotta slow down. You gotta slow down, because this lifestyle is very, very dangerous. And I've seen some people make a career out of it, being career criminals, where their docket sheet is probably miles long. And I don't want that for my kid. That is not the seeds that I planted in my kid. You'd want to go before the judge? Hey, lock them up. Lock them up, because they need to sit and they need to fester in this. At the same time, you don't really know what's going on in these prisons. You don't really know what's going on in these jails. So you want them to learn the lesson, but put them in a soft, nice one. You can't, it's not like you're picking gels out of a vending machine. You can't press A5 and say, hey, I want this one with the tennis court and the pools and stuff. You do a crime, you're just going to have to do that time. Those natural consequences, they came back and biting them in the butt. Do I intervene? Do I get them the Johnny Cochran of today and get them out? Or do I allow them to sit and think and to learn? And I don't know. I really don't know. So during this challenging time, when I first put them out, I experienced God's presence in a powerful way. He brought me together with a group of women who were facing similar struggles. They also had teens that were just doing against the grain things that were not of their upbringing. And we all related to one another, because we don't know anyone who has children of this age group, of this teen age group. And even though they're from completely different walks of life and completely different areas, we live in different areas, and they're all exhibiting the same types of behaviors, the same type of disrespect towards authority. It wasn't always that way. It's like something evil, some evil force is grabbing hold of these kids, man. We gotta save them. We gotta save them. We felt that we were alone in this situation, and it wasn't till, I don't even know how we even got on the conversation, but we just started sharing stories and similarities of things that was going on and behaviors they were all exhibiting. Something evil is at play here. Something is grabbing a hold of our kids and really turning them out. And we have to do something. We have to make a change. And we had decided that we were going to form a community group. We were going to form a community group, and it's still in the works now. And we're trying to get other parents or other caregivers that are going through the same struggles, and they are doing it silently, because we've been doing it silently. I've done it silently for a year, where a lot of my family didn't even know what was going on. It was putting me in a state of depression. Now, I do have 4 other kids where I have to show up for. I have to be present for. I have a full-time job. I have 2 businesses to run. I can't allow this evilness to swallow me up too, because then I felt myself snapping. I felt myself letting everything fester, everything accumulate. And that combination of everything, it was tearing me up. It was tearing me up to the point where I almost lost my job. I was unhappy, and I was so stuck in like this deep, deep depression, and I didn't realize it. I was stuck in a functional freeze, and it took me a while to be able to climb out of that. And it was a slow climb, very slow climb. I mean, sloth speed. I have to do something about this. I have to speak up about this. And with that group of women, we were able to support and uplift each other in profound ways. Our conversations were raw and honest, and it was clear that God was at work. Very clear. And this experience led me to a couple of different Bible stories, but one being the story of Balaam, how either me or my child to keep trotting around this path, doing what I want to do, and there being an angel waiting to slay me. And I didn't want to wait for God to have to open my eyes, because in that story, Balaam had to have his leg broken. And I've never had any broken bones. And I don't plan on it, and I mean that in like a literal sense, but metaphorically, I do not want God to have to sit me down in a way that I am in pain, I am in turmoil, I am suffering, to be able to. Now, if a donkey comes and speaks to me, now I don't have any donkeys, but I do have cats. And if a cat speaks to me, I'm going to be really, really scared. I don't want to have to get it to be that point to where there was an angel right in front of me waiting to slay me had I continued down that path. So that was the one story. And I had to keep asking myself, like, God, am I Balaam? Am I Balaam? Like, am I down this path? I don't want to be Balaam. I don't want to be Balaam. And then the other story, it was about the fig tree not producing any fruit. And the owner of the land wanted to have the gardener pluck it and cut it down. I don't want God to cut me down because I'm not producing any fruit in my life. So all of these Bible stories just resonated with me, and I felt the Holy Spirit moving in me, and I felt the Holy Spirit speaking to me saying, like, hey, wake up, because I need you to see that you have moved. Now, God didn't move. God did not move. God is an unmovable, unchangeable God. I moved away from God. I moved away from the plan that God had for me. I moved. And I was moving in a way that it was taking me so far away that I felt very close to death. Now, I don't have anything going on with me health-wise. I don't have anything going on for me mental-wise, but I had this feeling of close to death. I really believe that when people are on their way to passing, whether they know it or not, and then something drastic happens, either, their health declines or a tragic accident happened. And I really, really believe that God opens the mind of people that when he knows that they're about to call them home. And I had that moment. And I was beside myself. Because I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to be cut down. And I have not proved myself to be worthy of God's kingdom. Now, going back to me speaking with this group of women, right? And one of the women, I had told them about like my struggles with my faith, with my Christianity. She said, and I really believe that she prophesied this to me, that I have to keep going, keep pursuing Christ, to keep pursuing this community group, because this had already been in the plan way before I had met these women. Let me say that. But she told me way before I even told her about my intentions with the community group. She said, Dom, you have to fall in line. You have to fall in line, and you have to prepare yourself to receive what God, and I'm getting chills as I'm saying it, you have to be able to receive what God is about to bless you with, because there is a line of people that is going to follow you. When she said that, I felt a wave go through my body. I hear it and I accept it. And I had to say, God, I trust you. God, I will wait on you. If I am going to lead, I'm going to lead people to God. Not to me, to God. The things that God has delivered me from, the battles that he's won for me. I will not be a good and faithful servant if I do not also give people what my experience was, the things that God also delivered me from. I can't do that if I am not right, if my relationship with God is not right. I can't do that. I just can't do that, because then it would be about me. And I don't ever want to take away the glory from God. I can't, but I don't ever want to have that mindset that I can't. So I had to get myself right. Now, going back, so those were the two stories. So the fig tree, the story of Balaam. Now, one that I did not expect. This experience led me to reflect on the story of the prodigal son. Now, what happened with the prodigal son is that, they received their blessing from their father, went on out their way and partied and spent all their money. And once they were broke, they were too ashamed to go back to their father's house. So they were eating trash. I'm paraphrasing this, not word for word now, don't, because I know some people can't understand what the Bible says. So I'm just saying this is how I received this message, and I'm giving it in a paraphrase. He was eating trash, and he had a revelation to himself and saying, the servants in my father's house, in my father's kingdom, eat better than me. You've gone so far away from God that you feel you're too ashamed to go to God, to where you are now. So you feel you gotta fix yourself up. So people confuse that come as you are. They're not talking about clothes. They're talking about come in the state that you are in. You coming in that state that you're in now. He was so ashamed of how low he had gotten, and he felt as though he could not return to his father's home because he had took the blessing that his father had gave him and basically partied and spent it, tarnished it, and now was eating trash, and then came to realization that even the servants in my father's kingdom are better than this. And that resonated with me, that I was going through so much, not because God was making me go through that. Now, I want to make that clear. I put myself in these situations. I'm taking full responsibility to put myself in these situations. And God was still with me, keeping me from getting the full wrath of him. Now, God will never tempt us. He cannot tempt us. God does not dabble in temptation, but he will use that to teach us a lesson. So with all of this party, and I'm doing it, not saying that I'm at the club or nothing like that, but I'm saying I wasn't in church, I wasn't reading my Bible, I wasn't working on the relationship with me. So when I say partying, I mean having a fun day Sunday. And it made me think that I saw my blessings start to slow down. And I also seen this clip of Pastor Mike recently on TikTok. And he said that the relationship with God that some of us have is transactional. So he said, you got your hand out. And then he said, God, he gives us that blessing. He gives us that blessing. He gives us that blessing. And he said, what happens is the enemy now, because they hear that exchange, that makes a sound. So I was not seeking God's face, but I was seeking God's favor. Hold on, let me say that again. I was not seeking God's face, but I was seeking God's favor. So my relationship became transactional. God, I need, God give. God, I need, God give. And the enemy, they hear that. They hear it. They're out in the fields. They hear it. And there's many points that I can bring to this. The movie Sinners, the enemy cannot enter unless you invite it in. So soon as they hear that that's all I'm doing. So then the enemy is able to move around. They're able to come in, and they're able to make things start to fester. That evilness starts to build. So that's where that sadness, that's where that depression, that's where that life of crime, that's where all of that, you're inviting it because it knows that your relationship with God is transactional. So Pastor Mike, he said, what happens is when you start to seek God's face. So when you start to seek God's face, what do you do when you see somebody you haven't seen in a while? You give them a big hug. So you're hugging, you're embracing God, right? So you're embracing God. So when you embrace God, that frees up his hands. So the embrace freeing up their hands. So the enemy, they're still coming, but guess what? God's hands are free to now hold the enemy back. So let me bring it back now. Because I done went on a side tangent, but I promise this all comes into each other's. The prodigal son, again. So he finally went home. And father's like, is that my son? That's my son. Oh, get the best things, cook a feast. We're gonna have a party. We're gonna celebrate. And it wasn't really. So the other son who had been there in the midst of the father working, doing all of these things, been beside the father this whole time. He got upset. He got offended. He said, "You about to have a party for what's the name? And I've been here with you this whole time. You ain't getting out of the best for me." And then he said, "Well, for my son was dead, presumed dead, but now is alive." So that's how God is when we return, when we stop with this transaction, and then we start to not only request his favor, but now request his face. And it's like when we start to do that, God rejoices because now we get to talk. Now we get to see, we get to work things out. We get to do all of that. So it's like when you're able to do that with God, he rejoices because he's like, yes, my child is back. My child is back. So that story that Jesus told about the prodigal son, that is us. God is waiting for the prodigal son to return. So now, so remind you, so the conversation that I've had with this woman, so this was the sermon that was preached the first Sunday after me meeting with these women. So after I had met with these women, now I want to point this out too, and I don't really want to go too much because it's not my story to tell, but this woman, one of the women that was in the group, she was having a very similar situation to what I was having with her child. Her child had came home and they had a feast. They had a feast that Sunday. And I said to her, the prodigal son has returned. And Sunday, that sermon, that was what the preacher had preached. And I felt chills again. That next day, my daughter had a doctor's appointment, and I had took her to that doctor's appointment. So she was home. She was home with me. So she had asked me to stop somewhere, but I had to go back to work, and I couldn't stop like wherever she was asking me to stop. And so I went home, and then I returned back to work, but I only had to work for like another maybe hour or two or something like that. And so then I hear an extra voice. So it's just me and my daughter in the house. I hear an extra voice, and it stopped me in my tracks. It was my child who I had put out, who I had not spoken to in a while. When I say God, and oh man, God will move. God will move. God will move when you least expect it. So the fact that, I'm getting chills again. The fact that I was obedient in the things that he was calling me to do, the things that he was setting up, aligning for me to do, because I was obedient in what he needed me to do, because I had returned and was able to hear that and was able to preach to these women in the medium that it was. When I say God was present in this medium. That when I was with these groups, we weren't in person. There was some praising going on. I had gave them my testimony of how God has delivered me, and how I know that because God has done it for me, I am not better than anyone. So if God can do it for me, God can do it for you. I like where this is going. God can do it for you. So I had gave these women this message to let them know that I already know that the situation that me and my child were going through, God had already went before me and fixed it. I know that it was worked out. So I was not worried. I knew that God would keep my child safe, in spite of the foolishness that they were doing, the things that they were trying to do, the opposite of keeping themselves safe. I made sure that I kept them wrapped in the blood of Jesus, kept them wrapped in prayer. I prayed for this child to be safe every single day, all day, no matter where they were at, that even if they were in the midst of some foolishness, that God would make them come out of it. God will make them come out of it. God kept them safe. I knew that if God can do that for me, God can also do that for those women. And God can also do that for you. And I said all of this to say, that day after I got off of work, my child was there. And I too made a feast for the prodigal son returning. Not to say that, I let them stay, but it was just being able to see them, because I had not laid my eyes on them in months, and being able to see them and just not fussing and, not saying like, hey, what you doing is wrong, none of that. No, showing them love and telling them how I know that God is with them and how I know that God is waiting for them. Being able to say that without nagging or bickering or causing any strife. And I mean, we had a good time. We were playing games and, we were laughing and joking and things like that. And we had a nice dinner. And it brought tears to my eyes that my other child was the orchestrator of that. Later on, I found out that my child had set that up for them to be there at that time because they knew that we were also going to be there. So for my child to orchestrate that, it was amazing. And that was a little biscuit that I needed, a little treat that I needed to say, you're an all right mom. You're an all right mom, because despite of everything that you may believe, that I may believe of how my parenting is going, the fact that my child who I raised, who I also plant those same seeds that other child got planted in them, being at 14 years old, was able to orchestrate, able to mediate a meeting between mother and child. And it was beautiful. And I thanked her so very much for being able to orchestrate that, for being able to even just have the mindset that was needed, because my God, it was needed. It was very much needed. And they left happy. They left fed. And it was amazing. It was amazing. And yeah, the story of the prodigal son, it resonated with me so deeply within that week. And it still continues. And this was months ago. A lot has happened since then, but opened up on a strong foundation that, yes, even though you are no longer inside of my household, I still will hold a space for you in my life, in my heart. And just because you no longer share the same address does not mean that we cannot still love one another, still have that unconditional love, because my love for that child has never been removed. I needed to make a decision of, I need to do what's right for the masses. And the things that they were bringing to my doorstep could have resulted in me losing my other children. And I could not have that happen. I just could not have that happen. I couldn't have allowed that to happen, because I would not have only been losing one child, I would have been losing the other four as well. And I can't see that happening, especially if that child making those decisions, they are making those decisions of their own will, and they are doing those things. So I had to make a very difficult decision. And I don't care if people say I didn't do the right decision. And I don't care if people say that they would never have done that. I used to say that I would never put my child out when they turn 18. I would have preferred for all of us to still live together, for all of us to still be in the same household. It just did not happen in that way. So again, I had been searching for a community that aligned with my values. And after meeting with these women, I felt drawn to create that for myself. So like I said, that following Sunday, the sermon was about the prodigal son return. And it hit me so hard in a way that I felt that I needed to take some action, because faith without works is what? Is dead. So in that moment, I felt God's presence around me, and it marked a turning point in my journey. So after that spiritual awakening, I did reach out. I did reach out to them. Some of the stuff I'll disclose. It is substance abuse and it is criminal behavior, which I had already discussed. And again, they're only 19, and like drinking at the age of 19 it's illegal, and whatever else you want to mix that with. They have some health conditions that should not be mixed with those type of things. So that's what led me to believe that they did not have a strong will to live, because if you have these serious health conditions and you're mixing that with drugs and alcohol, you can't want to live. And I made sure that they felt my love and that they knew that I was proud of them. Began to share some scriptures, just letting them know that God is waiting for them. And I also made it clear that, again, that they always have a place in my heart, no matter what life decisions that they make. that will never change. But as a parent, I realized that I had been enabling their behavior by not setting clear boundaries and expectations and responsibilities. And this lack of boundaries was hurting the both of us. And, through therapy and seeking God's guidance, I found strength to set those limits and encourage their independence. And still continue to. Even with all of that, they still continue on the same path that they're on. And they're incarcerated because of it. You do the crime, you do the time. Um, and of course, they expected for mommy to bail them out, for grandmother to bail them out, daddy to bail them out. And it isn't going to happen. Not this time around. You now have to sit with your consequences. Something that I learned is when God is trying to teach someone a lesson, God is trying to sit someone down. If you intervene, you will now be yoked with those consequences. And I don't want to be in a line of fire when God starts setting stuff on fire. So, yeah, I'm going to sit this one out. I am definitely going to sit this one out. I'm going to love you, but I want to love you from a distance. I'm going to love you from a distance. I put a couple dollars on your commissary, but buddy, it's not happening. Despite my efforts, the situation continued to escalate. Again, it was putting my other children at risk, and I had to make a difficult decision. It was a heartbreaking choice, but I knew it was necessary for the well-being and safety of everyone involved. We need to understand that you're not invincible. You are not invincible. Consequences do also hit home for you. You are not exempt to any kind of consequences. That's what, down the long run, we were teaching them. You get one free. You get one free. And they use that one now. This is the second runarounds. And these are some serious charges, very serious charges. And it's just not looking too good. I still remain positive. Did it also make me question my parenting? Again, I went down that, where did I go wrong? This is a product of the environment type of thing. The judges and the lawyers are going to do it. The DAs are going to do it. Clearly they had a bad upbringing, or, the parents. It's the parents to blame. I'm not out doing that. I work a 9-to-5 job. I pay my taxes. I pay my bills. My bills are paid. I don't go around doing that, and I don't hang around people who do that. I don't even drink. I don't smoke. I don't do any of that. I don't do no crimes. I just don't. I firmly believe that this is just something that you're going to have to work out. This is one of those adult situations where it's like, okay, now you're going to have to sit. You're going to have to sit, and you're going to have to learn this lesson for yourself, buddy. You want to be an adult. You want to be independent. Go ahead. This is going to be one of those things that either turn you into a career criminal, or is going to say, like, hey, I don't enjoy prison. I don't enjoy these uncomfortable beds. I don't enjoy not having a bathroom to myself. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take, but it's one of those things where they need to sitting and be with God, and enjoy the flavor of consequence, because that's all you're going to be eating for a while. But yeah, so that has been my parenting journey. I didn't really expect this to be in the introduction, but it just felt like I would be doing a disservice to what I was trying to build. What I was trying to create is the raw, unfiltered, unpredictable thing that parenting is. There is no prediction of parenting. You can set a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, 20, 30, 40-year goal, but some things are going to happen, and you have to learn how to pivot. If you cannot learn to pivot and learn to adjust, and also if you don't have God in the forefront of that, I highly suggest that you do, because I could not have done anything without the help of God. I'm afraid to see what life is like without God in it. I'm just sorry. I just can't. God has been too good to me. Too good to me, even when I was undeserving. God has been too good to me for me to just say, I'm just going to ignore God. I just don't ever want to know that. There is a lyric in a song, and I'll testify of the battles you've won, how you were my portion when there wasn't enough. I have been playing this song on repeat. So the song is basically saying how God has already went to whatever it is that you are currently in. God has already fixed it. God has already saw the outcome. God has already done it. It's called The Story I'll Tell. It's by Maverick City Music and Naomi Rain. I play this song on repeat every day because I am going to testify the battles that God has won and how God was my portion when there wasn't enough, because I know I'm not enough. I'm not enough on my own. So I know that in order for me to be complete, I need to have Christ in my life. And with having Christ in my life, that is how I get to God. That is how I get to stay in God's grace, in God's mercy. And that is how I get to have his face with his favor. And that is how I get to stay there. And I know that it's never been me. It's never been me, but it's been God. It's been God. So that is how this introduction to I Like Where This Is Going podcast turned into me testifying the battles that God has won. Because even with this situation, now this situation is fresh off the press. This very situation with my child being in jail. This is the first time that they've been actually in jail. They've been arrested before, but they have never been in prison. So this is the first time. This days new. So I had to shift a little bit in what this introduction would be, because the community group that I started is called Hope Space, and we do have a website. I will link the information below. It is a virtual community group. So where we had just weekly discussions, just discussing different things. And the past couple weeks, there have been times where I just couldn't do the meeting. It was just something going on. So I was just like, okay, it's time for me to record so that I could play it back. But then I said, well, why not just include this into the podcast and kind of change where this is going. But I like that this has been raw and this has been just unfiltered, and this has just been me, and this has been my parenting journey. And I encourage other people to also speak up about the things that you've been doing with your parenting, because I guarantee you there is someone else going through the same thing that you are also going through, but they're silently struggling because they don't want to be judged by society. They don't want somebody to come on, think you're coming onto the internet crying to us on the internet. No, there are probably some people out there that you can help. People who are probably on the brink of where they may want to take their life, but knowing that you are not alone in something helps you just a little bit. Just knowing that, okay, this is not just something that is unique to me. This is something that someone else is experiencing. And just having that sense of community, just knowing that you're not alone, and that it starts to make sense a little bit. And then you know that, okay, if this person has gotten through it, I know that I can also get through it, because I know that there are probably moms out there who have already been on the other side of where I want to be, where, my child is back home, out in the free air, and not incarcerated. There are probably parents out there already at the